so we'll do the rock and roll rendition. Hello, everyone. The universe doesn't care about you, not even a little. It doesn't care about me either, it's nothing personal. It's just there, and we just blink in and out of existence within it for an infinitesimally small period of time until the whole thing, someday, comes to an inevitable end. And it will end. Most likely by dissolving all matter into a vast, featureless, lukewarm energy bath. And at that point, every single thing you've ever done or ever will do, and anything anyone else ever did, will be rendered completely and utterly moot, swept away into absolute irrelevancy, as if it had never been at all. And that, my friends, is exactly why people generally don't ask atheists to give sermons. We're not commonly considered an uplifting bunch on Sundays. I've been an atheist my entire life. And while I've certainly been asked questions, I'm just going to flip over this. Sorry. All right. While I've certainly been asked questions like, well, what about wonder? Or what's wrong with magic? Or perhaps more bluntly, isn't your worldview kind of depressing? I've never once been asked to give an uplifting assessment of our place in the universe. And that's completely fair. As a group, atheists are totally defined by what we don't have. A is without, theist, God belief. That's it. To say I'm an atheist is to say no more and no less than I do not have a belief in a God. That says something about what I'm not, but it doesn't say anything about what I am. I've come to believe it's a problem that there's no positive proposition that comes with atheism. The fact is, no one can live a full life fully defined by what we don't have or by what we aren't a part of. I'll call this a negative identity. And I think that negative identity has a lot to do with how atheists are perceived in our society. And in case you weren't aware, we're typically ranked somewhere around serial killers and members of Congress for who people trust the least. But while I do truly and fully believe every word I said at the beginning, and in case you forgot that's we're all doomed, I also believe that how it all ends is almost completely unimportant. We don't live, hopefully, at the end of the universe. We live here and now, and the biggest questions should be about that. What I want to do here today is sketch out a few positive propositions. I want to share some ideas about the way meaning and what we tend to call our spiritual lives could work without any concept of magic or gods or anything supernatural at all. So the first question is, why should we even care about meaning? After all, there are plenty of philosophical or atheistic thinkers out there that dismiss the whole idea as kind of unnecessary. Meaning isn't necessary for bees or trees to do their thing without complaining, so why should it suddenly be necessary for us? I'm sure I'm not alone when I say I've had plenty of days in my life where the eat, sleep, obligation routine feels pretty crushing or pointless, dare I say eternal. Where just sustaining my own existence didn't seem like quite enough by itself. And the fact is, we are self-aware beings. We can see the general trajectory of life. We can see our place in it. We can see that it will end. Without some kind of meaning to give us purpose in the meantime and lift us to action, I don't see any reason why we bother. Life is hard. Meaning gives us the fire to continue. But if we dismiss the eternal rewards that are promised in many major faith traditions, because don't forget, it's all doomed, then that limits our search for meaning only to things that are transient, temporary, subjective. It requires accepting that there is no objective, no ultimate mystical purpose out there for us to discover. How could there be if it's actually over at some point? Eternal, universal, lasting, they seem like important metrics for meaning. They seem to be central to major belief systems all over the world. But is that really the only way? Of course not. As self-aware beings, we can still create meaning for our own tiny little lives. Lives which are for us the sum total of all existence and all time. It may be personal or subjective, but personal and subjective does not mean unimportant. Buddhists, conveniently, are often also an ungodly bunch, and they've wrestled with this for a long time. One of the ways they explore this is through a ritual that involves spending several weeks or even months creating amazingly intricate, stunningly beautiful works of art called sand mandalas, sometimes built with millions of grains of sand, a tiny pinch at a time. We can imagine the natural sense of accomplishment that we would feel if we made such a fantastic piece of art over weeks or months of painstakingly precise labor. We've all created things we're proud of. I dare say with that pride came the hope that it would last and be appreciated, if only by ourselves. But then not long after it's created, the mandala is simply swept up and scattered back into nature, destroying it utterly, as if it had never been. This is a Buddhist lesson on impermanence, I believe. It also proves that atheists are not the only ones who know how to take something magical and ruin it. But it is not a ritual to remind us all that building something beautiful is a waste of time. I see it as a reminder that no matter how amazing, intricate, or important the work may seem, every single thing will come to an end. Therefore, we must remember that meaning does not come from some prize at the end of a journey. There are no winners at the end. Meaning must come from the journey itself, from within the journey itself. And here is where I get to make every fellow atheist and every beautiful non-believer crawl out of their skin a little bit. Because in order to access this meaning, in order to actually feel like we are empowered in our own existence to affect change in a matter on any level, we have to have one thing, which is almost universally despised by any atheist worth their salt. Give me a second. And that thing is faith. I've personally considered faith one of the dirtiest words for most of my life. I've always seen it as a shorthand for a certain invulnerability to critical thought, a way to hold on to a belief in spite of clear evidence that it's totally wrong, or even evil. And my perception of faith is fairly widely held in the atheist community. But we've been wrong about that. We all need faith, all the time, every day. But in order to really see why, we have to talk about one of my favorite things, math. Specifically, we need to look at a particular kind of math called chaos theory. This is just math that deals with systems that essentially feed back on themselves. In other words, pretty much everything in our universe. Any process that works on itself over and over again through time. Chaos theory is the math that shows how that works. And what it shows us is that tiny changes, compounded over time and cascaded through many interactions, actually completely change the results of even the largest systems. The tiniest variation at the beginning and the end result is totally different. And this means we are all gods. Right now, I'm changing the entire world's weather systems next year, and so are you. I'm serious. Take a moment and think about your breath. You breathe in a bunch of molecules, and you breathe out different molecules with some amount of force. For most of human history, it was assumed that these tiny interactions were irrelevant and that the tiny little change in the atmosphere you make every single time you breathe would just be washed out by the larger atmospheric effects, like jet streams or oceanic evaporation. But when we started modeling weather data, we quickly realized that simply wasn't true, and that tiny variations would, over time, completely change the entire weather system all over the world. And at this point, I'd like everyone to take a minute to close your eyes and visualize the sea of air you are swimming in right now. Think about the little ping pong ball air molecules slamming into each other, bouncing around, so tiny, all around you. Now take in a breath and hold it for a moment. Now let it out in a puff. And think about all the air molecules you just sent into the world. Picture them colliding with the other molecules that were just sitting there, floating around, minding their own business before you started pushing them around. Consider you moved all that air out of position. And so now when a breeze comes by, the molecules the breeze shoves around will be in different positions than they would have been otherwise. And they will shove future molecules differently. And those differences will continue to cascade through every interaction that air has through the rest of its journey until the Earth itself ends. Congratulations. You've just left your almost eternal legacy. So that's a neat trick, but there are two things that are important to consider. First, this isn't just about weather. Consider a walk down the sidewalk and you smile at someone. Maybe they're having a bad day, but you just made them feel a little bit better. Now their interactions with others may be a little bit different, which can change the interactions that they have with other people. And at some point, everyone in the world could be touched in some tiny way by that one unimportant smile. We could speculate all day on the details, but the one thing we know for sure is that almost all systems in the universe that we experience every day are these so-called nonlinear systems that feed back on themselves, including many psychological processes we wouldn't normally consider in mathematics. The second thing is that this isn't actually very useful. Sure, I'm changing all the weather next year constantly, and I'm changing all of you in some way as well. So obviously I can affect change, and that is important to understand because being able to affect change is a necessary part of feeling meaningful. But we can't usually predict the effects of the changes we're making. It may as well be random. Our ability to perceive and understand all the forces at work around us is limited. Trying to time your next sneeze to stop a hurricane probably won't work very well. But that's where faith comes in. While our perceptions are limited and our understanding is limited, there are things we know and there are things we can think are likely to be true. We can have faith that smiling at someone will probably cause an effect that is more joyful than swearing at them. And that making people more joyful is good. Or that trying to help somebody will improve someone's life, either theirs or ours. In a universe that is far too complex to boil down to determinism, faith is a necessary component for us to believe that the effects we're having on the world are in accordance with our values. And that's also a core requirement to feeling like our existence is meaningful. Now, faith is certainly not enough. There are plenty of people who have faith they're being good people while they do horrible, horrible things. And those are the people the atheists think about when we talk about faith. But still, it is a necessary component of our lives on a regular basis for us to function at all. The most important tools we have for utilizing this power are understanding and knowledge. The more we can learn, the closer our perceptions align with the reality of this cosmic sandbox we're playing in, then the more likely it will be that we can see the ways we can truly be a meaningful influence in the world around us. I just know we can't know it all. And after we've done our best to understand, some faith will always still be required. I think the atheist movement is right to stress the pursuit of knowledge. I just think it's wrong to pretend it's the only thing of importance, as it often does. If we could only act with total knowledge, we would never move an inch. So just a quick recap. We're all beings of truly staggering influence in the universe. We're both minute grains of sand and co-creators of the ultimate universal sand mandala. And we require a sense of meaning to move us forward and take action in the world. The more we can learn and perceive, the more powerful we become, though we'll never learn enough to escape the need to have some faith and humility baked into the mix. Even so, our influence will extend all the way to the end, to the big cosmic dustpan brushing up the last few grains at the end of time, long after we're gone, and any being with any ability to remember or care is long gone as well. Meaning isn't only found in the big things. It probably isn't found exclusively at the end of this life. It is here and now for each of us to create and discover every minute of every day for ourselves. So with that in mind, I have a couple things for you to consider. What matters to you? What meaning, purpose, or values lift you up and move you forward? Do your concepts of meaning assume permanence? Can you mourn endings if necessary, while also appreciating the gift you were given for the time you had it? Are you doing your best to understand the immense impact you have on the world around you, even though it may just be one tiny interaction at a time? Can you take responsibility for the power you wield and not pretend to be insignificant? Can you access just a little bit of faith to wash away those walls of doubt that hold us back? If we move toward understanding, humility, appreciation, and faith, I believe that meaning can make itself clear to us in our short, ultimately pointless, and completely amazing lives. We just have to be looking. I'll leave you with the words of Tim Minchin, an atheist, comedian, and performer, from his UWA commencement address in 2013. There is only one sensible thing to do with this empty existence. Fill it. Keep the faith, friends.